And greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Tonight we have our friend Shade with us. Do you want to say hello?
Hey.
Hey. And so as per my usual process, I'm going to sit quietly and listen while Shade tells everything she can remember about the dream from beginning to end, kind of chronologically, and then we'll carry on from there. So start whenever you're ready.
So this isn't so much the entire dream, it's just one blip of it that is very clear, if that makes sense. The whole dream just sort of starts cripe crazy and then ends cripe crazy, but there's a middle section of it that's very clear. Okay. So I'm standing in this intersection of like two massive highways. Everything's really washed out in color. Everything's like various shades of brown and gray with like hints of color underneath it. And it's like the world is in ruin in a way. And there's the cat I mentioned.
we call that extra value content.
Come in here.
Gives me a chance to catch up on my notes. It's
All right. Hopefully he won't start meowing to go back out.
That's okay.
I want in, I want out. I want up, I want down. Feed me, don't feed me.
Pet me, that's enough. I know, this boy.
I love cats.
Right there. Absolutely. Okay, so just to catch up where you left off, hints of color beneath the brown and gray, a ruined wasteland. You're standing in an intersection.
Yeah. I mean, there's some nature to it, but it's lacking vibrance in a way.
Okay.
So I'm just feeling very sad, confused, and there's a lot of pressure. Everything feels heavy on my mind. And I'm looking for somewhere to go, and I don't know where I'm going or how to get there. All I know is I'm just trying to find this place, and quickly, and I don't know how. So I'm kind of in the middle of this crossroads, lost and alone. As I'm walking around, I see nearby is a white mare and her foal grazing in like a little copse of trees. And it crosses my mind for a second to take the mare and leave. But I can't, because who's going to take care of the little foal, you know? And the foal's too small to ride or keep up, so I'm frustrated, and I sink to my knees in the middle of the intersection, just sort of waiting for whatever comes. But there's nothing. All sides of this intersection are completely devoid of traffic. And then, just sort of out of nowhere, comes this very large stallion. I don't know how. I just know it's a male, not female, not something else. Sorry, I can't think of something else to say regarding that bit. Sure. Gelding, that's the word.
Ah.
And he's transparent, almost invisible, and I can just barely see him. I'm not sure if it's he wanted me to see him or he needed me to see him, but it's like there's just light reflecting off his coat, like light off a piece of glass. Just sort of illuminating the curves and the edges of the figure. And he's very strong, and he just walks up to me, afraid and without weakness, and then he slowly lowers his head, sniffs me, and that's when I see the light sort of glint off a very long horn at the center of his head. I'm like, that's a unicorn. I pet his nose, and then he helps me up, and he begins to sort of take me away from this place. We don't get very far before I kind of fall through him, like he's a ghost. And then I try to follow him further, but he vanishes. He's just too fast for me to keep up with him. And that's about where things stop making sense.
One thing I like to do at this point is ask folks if, having gone through it now twice, and the second time in just minute detail, do you have any new epiphanies, any new understanding of, oh yeah, I never thought of that, and when I think of that and that, you put something together? Did anything occur to you while you were describing it?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
I almost want to say that while we were leaving the area, as we were going up, where we start seeing cars,
Yeah.
there's sort of these dark shapes approaching us, like people, but I can't really make them out. They're just sort of dark silhouettes. I want to say there's 3 of them.
Okay. And they were...
Hello, kitty.
Did you have a sense of whether they were friend or foe, whether they were there to observe or interact?
Definitely not friend and definitely not observers. They were in our direct path.
Okay. So, did you, now that you think of it, was there any relationship to those things appearing and you falling through the stallion?
I want to say yes, there was.
Okay.
But what specifically, I don't know.
Okay.
What are you doing?
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of interesting things to deal with. I'm not sure where to start sometimes. So the first thing that comes to mind is the idea of a crossroads, and but more than that, the idea of freeways or highways or large multi-lane roads, suggesting travel. And you did mention that you're trying to go somewhere, but you're just lost. You don't know if you're even going in the right direction, and you're just moving forward because that desire to get somewhere is motivating, and you actually feel pushed. How did you say that? You felt like there's pressure from behind to move forward, and this moving forward is taking you to the crossroads, where crossroads might tend to represent places of transition, but also places of options for travel. Once you get to a crossroads, you can make a change. You can turn left, right, you can go straight. So there's something something to that. One thing I did want to ask you is how long ago this particular dream happened?
Within the past week or 2.
Okay. And can you think of anything going on in your life where you had to make a decision about something, or whether you were or you were trying to make a change in your life at that time, or maybe a change was happening whether you wanted it or not? Does that sound familiar?
I mean, in my mind, no. Within the recent area, yes. I'd gotten into a fight with some friends several months ago, and it's been a very sore process. Okay. Because they no longer talk to me, and I no longer talk to them, so...
I mean,
and then on top of that, there's just the general stress from work, and suddenly my schedule went from, 30 hours a week to 60 hours a week to make up for a lack of staff. So
that's a big deal.
My world just sort of went crazy, and it's like nothing feels like it's changing, but I guess it has.
It seems like all the pieces are the same, but the shape of those pieces is different.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's. I don't want to
Kind
put
of
words
like,
in your mouth.
it's a sea of chaos, but somehow you're still standing still.
Sure. Gotcha. Trying to think of. I mean, it could be related to your work, but it can also be related to friends. I mean, the idea of having difficulty with your friends and being in this dreamscape that is lonely. You're alone in the dream. You didn't have friends with you, so that could relate. Could also be. Yeah, I think that crossroads is very important. And that's a destination of its own, but you get there and it's not where you're actually trying to go. It's like you're trying to get somewhere else, but that's the center of the dream. That's like the turning point around which the dream rotates, because then you end up going back the other way. Yeah, I'm reaching for something. Something seems significant there, but I don't know what it is. If you turn that idea over in your mind, nothing pops out?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, I think it is interesting too that you've got this pressure to move forward. When you think about that in your daily life, I mean, do you feel like you're under a lot of pressure to make progress?
I mean, in general, yes.
Yeah.
In general, yes. It's sort of the case of so much has happened lately. With COVID, everything feels so stagnant.
Yeah.
That you feel like, you should have gotten so much more done, but everything's just been still and waiting for things to change.
Okay. That could relate to the idea of this space you were in being very sparsely populated by anything happening. I mean, it's just this giant road and it's going somewhere, but it's empty and there's just not a lot happening around it. And there's a crossroads, and I think it's also significant that the main road you're on is big and wide, but the crossroad is smaller. That almost like opportunities for change are not as wide, as large as the direction you're already going. I don't know if does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure. And I'm not saying it's the only answer, but that's the image I'm getting in my head too. It wasn't like the highway. The intersection was equidistant both ways. It wasn't the same size road crossing. I think there's something significant in there too, of that being a different size. I don't know. We can put that on hold. Sometimes I come back around to things. Sometimes I drop it because I just can't make sense of it either, and that's okay. It's a funny thing too, because not every element of the dream is critical to the dream, but they're all bits and pieces that sometimes we'll go back and pick out just maybe the most important things. I think it was an important interaction with the mare and the foal. I don't know that the color is significant. Maybe a white horse. Very often a white horse has been associated with symbols of white itself is symbols of purity or something being unspoiled, something being untouched. I don't know if that brings anything to mind.
Not really.
Okay.
Innocence, perhaps, in a general sense of the color white and archetypes associated with it.
Yeah. I don't know if that is necessarily relevant, or if that's what it actually means to you. If you're aware of that archetype, maybe that could have found its way into your dream. And it is interesting that the reason I went to untouched was you chose not to touch it. You chose not to bring that in to your problem. And it was specifically because that horse had other responsibilities that would have negative consequences if you interrupt that that relationship. I don't know if that rings any bells. Are you dealing with anything that
in the waking world? Yes, but I don't want to divulge that information.
That's fine. Yeah. That might be a critical element. Somewhere you had this brief thought of maybe I can get where I'm going if I take advantage of this opportunity, but then you felt kind of guilty for it because it was going to do some harm, and you mentioned it as like an ethical concern that even in your dream you stuck with those ethics of, I'm not going to do that. I could take this advantage. I could use this opportunity to benefit me, but I'm going to choose not to do so, even if it means I stay lost. Does that feel significant?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that might be the explanation for that, and I think it might relate to where you're going in the dream, what it is you're trying to find. Just generally the idea of seeking to find something is arriving at a destination. There's a feeling of making a connection that is jumping out to me, and it could be related to friends and a fight. It could be, but which is suggested by the feeling of loneliness in the dream itself. You're all alone. You're trying to get where you're going all alone. That seems important too, and that you would pass up opportunities to make it easier on yourself because it wasn't the right decision. Yeah, I don't know if you feel like you can say anything about that generally.
Sorry, I'm a bit distracted. My cat wants to be pet right now.
That's okay. Is you heard what I said?
Yes, I did.
Okay, fair enough. And
it's sort of hard to like. It's one of those very abstract things that's hard to say it in its entirety without saying way too much that needs to be said.
Sure, and it might relate, it might not, but if you think
it relates. The individual pieces of it relate to things in the waking world, but I don't want to divulge specifically what they are.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's and that's a tough one
too.
That
sort of individual scene has a connection to somebody I know, but it's not my place to divulge that person or their problems.
Sure, I got you. That might make it a little rough on getting a full sense of what we're dealing with here, because I think that but the ideas are mostly what's important. Is that what I'm looking for is a lot. What is it to make sense of something? It's to find a kind of coherent narrative that ties all the different elements together and shows why the pieces occur where they did. That's why I'm very obsessed sometimes with chronology. Did this happen first or did that happen first? Was it related? Did it see you? Did that trigger something? Because very often those elements in the dream are trying to tell you, or you're trying to process your way through. I think this is connected, and if your waking mind can't connect those dots, your abstract sleeping mind process says, "Well, it's kind of like this." And then that happens, and you're supposed to help you figure out how to put those pieces together in real life, and it's not always that easy. So, I think it's also important that you get to the crossroads, that you made it there on your own, and that itself was a place that something happened, even though it wasn't the final destination. It wasn't the place you were actually looking for. In fact, it was just the place where you broke down, where you finally said, "I don't even know which way to go. I'm at this crossroads and I'm still lost, even though I've got these opportunities around me." Does that still relate to that other situation?
Yes.
Okay. And then you've got, only after you had given up, like a complete, I don't want to say surrender, but how would
Surrender seems like the right word in my mind.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind, but I thought there might be a better way to say it. It's that giving up, but it's not just giving up. It's like saying it's like an acceptance. Like, I'm just lost. I am not going to change this on my own. And then kind of a hero appears, or at least something comes to you at that moment of despair, in a way, and there's a connection made. There's and it's not another vehicle. It's not a person. It's not something that may be like a monster that looks scary but comes to, so the idea of this being, I don't know, what is your connection with horses and unicorns? I don't want to make any assumptions.
I mean, in general, horses have been a favorite animal of mine since I was a child. I've never really had the opportunity to really, ride horses and, spend a lot of time with them. I live around a lot of horse farms, so they're a very common sight for me.
Okay.
And, I mean, emotionally, I find them as very magnificent creatures. But,
And specifically with unicorns, I mean, you laughed at my Lord of the Rings reference. I imagine you're a fantasy fan in general.
Yes.
You've kind of had that association with unicorns as magical creatures. You'd love to meet one. You imagine them being kind. I want to say beneficent. I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for. Benevolent, yeah. Looking to dispense give aid to the worthy, so to speak. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like this creature would not have approached you if it thought you were a bad person. It came out there. It came out there because you needed help, and it thought you were worthy of its help, and that.
Yes.
Okay. I think there's something to that there. I think there's also something to the idea that. Oh, sorry, son. I don't want to wake him up. He'll get all over my paperwork. I think there's something to that it's this fantasy creature that has strong associations with being good and a good judge of character, in terms of it wouldn't help you if you were not worthy. If you were a bad person, it wouldn't come to your aid. It would just keep walking. And that it was male and not female. I don't know if there's associations with that you're comfortable talking about. The idea of strong masculine.
It's not, in my mind, it's not a motherly energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You have this.
It's not like a female energy or even a neutral energy. It's a distinctly one-sided energy in that sense. And I mean, in my own personal life, I've had a lot of issues, I'd say, with my mother and the sort of feminine aspect of myself.
Sure.
And it's a lot easier, even in my personal life, for me to connect with my father or with male figures and interact with them.
Okay.
Versus my trying to interact with female figures.
I know there was something you were not comfortable talking about that might relate to the mare and the foal, but this is another angle for it too, is that was a mother and child, a female horse, and this is a male horse coming to your rescue. Does that make sense in a way? The idea that you would reject the opportunity to take advantage of assistance from a female energy and get then eventually rescued by a more masculine representation.
Yes, that does make sense.
Do you have any thoughts around that in terms of your current circumstances? Does that bring anything to mind that you're comfortable sharing?
I mean, it's trying to talk around things.
Yeah.
It's trying to talk around a lot of things. Because I know what that individual scene with the foal and the mare relates to and who it relates to. And I can see that
Okay.
But like I said, it's not my place to talk about those people or what they're dealing with.
Sure. And then you think maybe that also
and
does...
how that in turn affects me.
Yeah. That is tough too. I mean, if we were doing this completely private and this was not recording for the internet, it would be a different story. You could tell me and you would have absolute confidentiality. So it makes it a little tricky for what we're doing. That's for sure. But in that sense, even if we just kind of dance around a little bit, does that connect to the male horse, or do you think that's maybe actually something else?
The male horse is more separate from the two. He's not in relation to those figures.
Doesn't feel connected.
No.
Okay. Yeah. I think what am I don't know what I think. Do I ever know what I'm thinking? That's why I take notes. I think it is interesting. This is what I was going to say is it's the idea of the light and the invisibility. It's like there's hidden options, hidden resources, hidden help, resolutions that make themselves apparent, and it's almost magical. Sure, you have to pay attention, but there's a luck factor to it too. Is that bringing anything to mind? All of those words I just threw at you.
I mean, not necessarily the luck. It doesn't feel like luck. Sure,
yeah, because this creature didn't stumble upon you, even though you stumbled upon it.
No, and I didn't stumble upon it. It just sort of showed itself to me for reasons.
Yeah, and that would be good to know. Like, what were the reasons? Why? I mean, we got the sense that the horse or the unicorn felt you were worthy of assistance, but we don't know what it wanted. Why would it come to you? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, if it's in general just sort of the vulnerability of it.
Yeah.
Of that moment.
Could be. You felt like maybe it was responding to your...
It's just sort of like, responding. Or in the case of, you finally, laid down, everything. You've surrendered. I don't have anything to fear from you.
Okay. That you had made yourself... what am I trying to say? Not harmless, but... I mean, you described it as having nothing to fear from you. So you had... what am I trying to say? I'm getting... Words are failing me. The vulnerability comes to mind. Finally... And acceptance came to mind too. Acceptance of this... of being lost. It seemed... the giving up seemed to trigger the appearance. Like it was coming to you. It was attracted to something about that experience you were having. Can you think of a way to describe that? What that feels like?
It's sort of... how do I explain it? It's just sort of like, oh, you noticed me, or I've been noticed, I've been seen kind of thing. Not in its mind, but in mine.
So in your mind, it was approaching you because you had noticed it? That almost...
Not necessarily. It's approaching to be of assistance.
Okay.
But my mind is like, oh, you've seen me. You know what's going on.
Okay. So the idea of being seen.
It wants to help.
Yeah. I think there's something very important in this moment in the dream. You're in the dead center of the crossroads. You've had this surrender experience that whatever you were putting out, he was picking up. He was responding to that need to the need to be saved, to be provided with a, I don't want to say saved, but maybe that's the right, can you think of a better word?
Rescued, assisted.
Yeah, something along those lines. I think it's
need for company in general.
Yeah, the loneliness. You think it was desperation? I don't know. Sometimes these words are tricky because they have little shades of meaning.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it could be. Okay, let's drop that for a minute because I think we talked around it a lot, and there's something there. There's something there. We don't have the shape of it just yet, but the idea that he came over to sniff you, and I can imagine that being your mind's way of saying, well, that's generally a horse-like behavior. That's what they do. They come over and just, and get up on you and who are you? But then that's when you saw the horn. You realized this is not just any horse. This is really something special. This is and I think that's important too. The idea that it was not just any old horse. It could have just been a regular horse, but this was a magical horse, and it was going to do something maybe that other horses couldn't do. That a simple riding a simple mare wasn't going to accomplish. I think there's something in that as well. Also, that the process of mounting was involuntary in a way. It would just kind of happen. You were swept up and whoosh, at a full gallop and back the way you came. Like, what did you think about that when that was happening? Like, why are we going this direction? Or
it's not like a why are we going this direction? It's more like we are going back. We are finally moving somewhere,
Yeah, so the sense
but no clear sensation of where we're going exactly.
Still didn't know where you were going, but seemed at least relieved of despair in the sense of, well, finally we're going somewhere. But it also not a sense of confusion either that it was the direction you'd come from. It still felt like a good thing just to be moving.
Yeah.
Did you have any specific thoughts about the idea that it was back the way you came?
It was back to the place that I needed to be, if that makes sense.
Yes, because that's what you were looking for.
But my mind doesn't know what specifically the place I needed to be was. All I know was I needed to be there.
Did you get a sense that you knew you were going to where you needed to be because that's the direction the horse chose, or was that feeling of, oh, of course this is the right direction, that kind of occurred independent once you realized where you were, the direction of your travel?
I think it's more like, I want to call it more of like a telepathy between unicorn and rider.
Okay.
If that makes sense. It's like my emotions are guiding it to where it needs to go.
It's responding to what you need.
It also has its sense of where it needs to go and what it needs to do.
Okay. I like that analogy of the telepathy kind of, because you weren't in mental communication saying, now turn left at the next street, but there was this mutual...
It's just sort of, it's an intuitive sense that it knows what it needs to do and is responding to how I am feeling and what I need.
Yeah, that it chose this direction because it got the feeling from you that going this way was going to take you where you needed to be.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's good too. That's good. I'm having a look at my notes here. I think it's also definitely important that the first sense of other people or seeing other people, even if it was just cars presumably being driven by people, or these potentially the shadowy figures, that's when that where the unicorn took you was back where you'd come from, and that back where you had come from was where more people are, and that you had been feeling lonely and isolated and confused and at this crossroads where you still don't know where to go, and the answer was go back. turn around, head back the way you came, and what you found there was people. You found other signs of life. What do you make of that?
It's sort of, in my mind, painted in that sense. It's a desire to reconnect with people in general, and to not want to be lonely, to get back to the sort of center of things,
Yeah.
Interaction and all that lovely jazz.
Well, sure. And just in a general sense, have you kind of been feeling lonely, isolated at home too much? Even going to work all the time,
yeah.
That's still work relationships. That's not maybe real meaningful, intimate relationships.
Yeah.
When you think about those two things together, what comes to mind? The dream imagery and the kind of real life feelings.
Just wanting genuine connection.
Okay. Yeah, because a lot of our, say, work relationships, as I said, are not very intimate. It's not really genuine. You got to put on your work face. Yeah. I don't know. Are you getting any of those kind of almost visceral feelings of things being meaningful when we talk about some of these elements? I don't know if I've gotten a sense of any of that kind of moment coming through from you.
Sorry, I have I'm very good at hiding emotion, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I make an excellent player and an even better chess player.
That's fine. Well, good. No, that's fine. Sometimes I can hear it in people's voices, and sometimes I need to ask. And so far of the different elements that we've talked about, what gave you that feeling of, oh yeah, those moments where it felt like something clicked, something fell into place? What would you say?
It definitely clicked back with the mare and the foal, like I said, because I can link that to something in real life, something very specific.
Yeah.
Again, I can't talk about that.
That's okay. That's really the only one so far?
So far, and then clicking sort of back into, that moment where we met the unicorn, and now we're moving somewhere, but it's again, we're dancing around a lot of things, and it's very hard to address them specifically without digging too deep into them.
Sure, fair enough. Okay, and that's fine. I mean, maybe this experience is going to be a lot of... what am I trying to say? Things you can't talk about. So we're not going to get the full answer out, say, to the audience, but you're getting something meaningful out of this. You're getting some pieces put together that kind of help you understand. Okay.
I mean, we can always cut it out. If we really want to dig there, we can always just edit it out and be like, we're going to resume in just a second.
We sure could. And I'm not opposed to that, but I'm challenging myself here too to say, can I work around some of these issues, which is fine. I don't, maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I'm hoping I don't need
We can try it first and then come back to it and just cut that bit off the end.
Yeah, I'm hoping I am still able to make something out of it, even if there's something people don't want to talk about. And that's perfectly fine. So yeah, and then like I said, maybe a little bit down the road, you can tell me what it is, and I just won't broadcast that. Is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You said there were 3 kind of dark, vaguely human shapes that were in your way, in your path. Were they on the shoulder of the freeway?
Yes, like walking towards us, and we were coming towards them.
Okay,
like we were on an interception course almost.
Like you were gonna run right over him if something didn't change.
It's not a good feeling going towards them, and it's sort of, I think that's what caused him to disappear.
Okay. Is
their approach.
Okay. Just to get the visual in my mind, were they shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, three in a line walking towards you, like
shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, like you're describing it,
blocking your path? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when the unicorn was kind of spooked, and he dropped you off and said, I got to go. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you said they were
not like I'm abandoning you, but I can't like, I'm not... How do I explain it? It's not an abandonment, it's a, oh, crap, hide.
Okay. So
Like a unicorn response.
Sure, like the unicorn had an involuntary response to these creatures, and it wasn't so much abandoning you as
they are in even mythology. They're very shy creatures,
skittish. Yeah, so it wasn't as much the horse said you're on your own. It was more like this. The unicorn said, "I gotta go. I can't deal with this. This was beyond his ability, or he didn't feel up to the challenge.
This is beyond my ability."
Okay, and then did you have any kind of interaction with those?
No, not necessarily.
Did you move beyond them? Did they block your path?
Like right when he disappears and we see them is kind of where things go back to crazy.
Okay, gotcha. Because you did describe a little bit of trying to follow him and catch up with him as he ran off. Did he run? Did he run past those shapes?
I think he disappeared like before we hit them. Okay. If that makes sense. He disappeared. I sort of fell off of him. Not necessarily like fell, but fell through him.
Yeah, kind of ghosted through. I'm thinking of the scene from The Matrix when that guy flips off the car and just ghosts into the front seat. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's kind of like when I'm sort of resume like being steady and standing, they're not there anymore and I'm trying to follow him, but
okay, and then they disappear.
Gone.
It's almost as if they appeared to spook the unicorn away because you were moving. I just had another dream recently where there were dark figures that presented a roadblock, a barrier to progress through to some other portion of the dream. And that's an interesting thing. Well, I mean, now two interviews in a row to have that. I'm wondering if that's something people experience. Maybe what I wonder is if it represents let's say, back it up a little bit and say the idea of a shadowy, vaguely human figure, but indistinct, something you can't really get a grip on. It suggests an unknown force, an unknown cause. That's kind of anthropomorphized into a human shape, but it could be anything. It's just this sense of something. I mean, this is
more like that sort of generic human silhouette.
Yeah,
but there's no it's two-dimensional. There's no real there's not a lot of feature or detail to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going with a vaguely anthropomorphic representation of a barrier. And what it would suggest is, it wasn't, you didn't hit a wall. It wasn't a monster. It was vaguely human looking, and it seems to me, or feels like it might suggest some element of yourself that wanted to put the brakes on your progress towards the direction you were going. Does that bring something to mind? Some hesitation or doubt?
I mean, the other way to paint it is the argument with my friends.
Sure.
And just sort of feeling stopped by everything that's attached to that.
Absolutely. And I mean, it might represent a part of you. It might represent external forces that are difficult to describe, difficult to get a grasp on. Like if you saw clearly what it was, you might know what to do with it. But since it's an indistinct shape, it represents the unknown barrier, a barrier that you can't. Yeah, I think you get what I'm saying. And the first thing that came to your mind was this, going back to the situation with your friends.
Yeah.
And you related that specifically to some of the circumstances maybe being out of your control, or the idea that maybe you don't understand exactly what the problem is fully?
More like something has come back to haunt me.
Okay, sure. Yeah, kind of vague, shadowy figures could be seen as ghost-like in a way. The return of past
sort
problems
of
or mistakes.
Yeah. the pain of it is stopping me from moving forward.
It sure seems like it. Yeah. And yeah, because it seems like the narrative of the dream in general, like the overall picture is you're traveling somewhere and you feel this pressure to move. You need to go somewhere, but you don't know where it is. You just that the need for movement itself, the need for progress, maybe to get somewhere, to find a destination to be, and that only when you get, I'm not sure what to make of the idea of, I don't want to mischaracterize it by saying it's only when you surrendered that finally a solution offered itself. That may be an experience you're having in real life, or it may be wish fulfillment of like, maybe if I just give up, something will happen and I can figure out what to do. Does that feel right? Does that make sense? Either way?
Yeah, it does make sense. I'd say it's more in the lines of like, sometimes you need to surrender to actually see the things in front of you.
Yeah. And you may be in some part trying to tell yourself you're trying too hard. You're putting too much effort into something that's taking you nowhere. And if you just put it down, maybe things will be better. Maybe then there'll be a chance to find a new direction of travel. I don't know if that's making sense.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't ever want to give these ideas that I have the weight of advice. So what I'm not telling you should do that. What I'm more saying is that there's at least some part of you that thinks that might be the way forward. If you just kind of not only giving up in a way, putting it down, stopping the search, accepting that it's not happening right now, but maybe even going backwards, maybe even retracing your steps, or again, that might be suggesting of a wish fulfillment type of thing. Like maybe if I just or a wish fulfillment, not as in doing something, but I wish I could return to the way things used to be. If that makes sense. I'm sure you're dealing with this difficulty with your friends, and you probably wish none of it was happening. That things that you could just go back to the good times that you used to have, right?
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's about all I can make sense of that. And yeah, so we've got the idea that you're maybe wishing things could go back to the way they were, and that would be the ideal resolution. And maybe the magical creature is like, it would take a miracle. It would take a unicorn coming out of nowhere to take me into the past, and that's not happening. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yeah, that rings a lot of bells.
Okay, good. As long as we're getting something. Like, I'd hate to throw out a bunch of ideas and people are like, no, none of that makes any sense to me. And I'm like, I give up. What are you going to do? But at least if we've got some sense of maybe that's where these, because, of course, my what am I trying to say? My understanding of how dreams work is you've got these real life issues you're trying to make sense of, and you get these abstract images that are saying, as I said earlier, what if it was like this thing and then this thing happened, and your brain's saying, do you get it now? And you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So well, I still feel kind of lost myself. Like there's something. I mean, now's a good time for me to ask, is there any element of the dream that feels significant that we just didn't spend enough time trying to look into or tease apart?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. I mean, just in general, do you feel like you've had I don't want to say a thorough understanding, but we've examined enough elements that you're like, this, the complete picture is kind of starting to become more clear?
Yeah, in the sense of everything for the internet, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
We can try to pick it apart further, but that's going to have to be cut off the end of it.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Provided you want try and pick it apart further.
Yeah. No, I think that's what I was just trying to make sure I didn't leave anything out too, because well, of course it's going to feel like there's missing pieces, because there are. We've left that out intentionally. But I also want to feel like broad strokes, we've got a grip on what's happening. And I think we did. I was just going over it in my head of the idea of, well, everything we just said in the last 5 minutes of the journey and the doubt and the desire to give up, and then it take a miracle to fix things, and you want to go back to the past. And I think all of these things make sense in that, where did these images come from? And that seems to be what they represent.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Well, you feel, we'll definitely talk afterwards, but you feel like we've, for now at least, come to a pretty good understanding of what happened and why?
Yes, we have.
Okay. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well,
the categories.
Go ahead.
The categories.
The cat.
My cat, not your cat.
He's being cute now. He must have.
The longest my cat has been quiet. He's actually he's being very attentive to the computer right now.
He's fascinated by this conversation too. Very nice. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're satisfied, I think we did a pretty good job. And again, I had that experience of like, I don't know what the hell to do with all of this, and then at some point, we just brought it together.
It made sense.
It's a freaking miracle. It is. I don't even know how this happens. I love it. So we'll go ahead. We've been at this about an hour and a half. We'll go ahead and wrap it up, and I'll talk to you afterwards. And I mean, at this point, I'll just say to everybody watching, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you want to join me for an interview, I'm harmless and respectful of privacy, and you can see that from this interview. So I'll just thank everyone for joining us for another episode of Dreamscapes. Thank you.